All right, and welcome to the first and last episode of the Jimmy House podcast. Coach Dom Vitalli, welcome. Every single time we try to start an episode, I generally like to ask, what are your top 3 favorite Goldberg matches of all time?
Man, first of all, this may be the first and last episode we have. What if I can't answer the question?
It's not actually a tradition, but we will very soon make one, regardless of wrestling.
Goldberg, Hogan, Atlanta, Georgia Dome, number 1.
Hell right? Yes, there you go. That covers it all.
Number 2. I can do it. I can do it. I'm a huge wrestling mark, dude. Like, don't get me wrong.
Floor is yours.
His TV debut win against Hugh Morris, Bill DeMott, a friend of mine, which I always thought was a cool connection there.
Oh, that's cool.
Bill DeMott being one of the first people that actually believed in me from a higher level. Cool. So that was pretty cool. And then, I mean, maybe it's a cheating answer, but I thought anything with Goldberg and Raven was pretty cool.
It was, it was. So, it really was. Yeah, I agree. That's awesome. Well, enough of that. First off, I want to say thank you to Mr. Dom Vitalli for taking the time out of his day as a father, as a coach, as a business owner to be the very first guest on the Jimmy House podcast.
I apologize in advance if this doesn't go anywhere because of that decision. No, man. It's a pleasure. No, honestly, I'm honored that you would consider me to not only just to be on the show in the first place, but to be the very first. And you told me that. I thought you were joking.
Yeah, I know.
But now I know you're telling the truth.
Yeah, of course.
No, man, it's a lot of pressure, but I'm used to it.
Oh, thank you.
No, thank you so much for even trusting me in this position.
Yeah, truly, the honor is mine. And it's hard to think of any more of a deserving of a guest because you've had such an impact on me since the first time that we ever trained here in this very gym, training AZ over in Mesa. He's a owner of Phoenix Championship Wrestling, so I've been lucky enough to be able to work and learn under him I just checked the other day, it's like it's over 2 years now.
It's crazy. It doesn't seem like it's been that long.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. Yeah. So, and when it comes to coaching in the wrestling ring, one of the best that I've ever experienced, period. And I've always told him this, when I moved to Austin, one of the few things that kept me here was this gym in particular. And it was sad that as soon as I started learning from Coach Dom, I had made a decision to move to Austin, but there was only a handful of things that really kept me here, and Coach Dom and his gym, the family that he's cultivated, was definitely one of them. So I want you guys to know that this is a very special person in my life, and I also consider him a mentor above everything else. There's only really a handful of people in my life that I really look to for advice, leadership, being able to talk through issues, and Dom actually has become one of those in a very short amount of time, and that's something that I hold very special and true to my heart. And I just wanted to give him the opportunity to share his story, as well as just kind of highlight how great of a facility that he's built here, as well as all the shows that he's brought to Arizona for how many years now?
We're 6 years running. Okay, actually now, yeah.
Great, yeah, and he's a coach, a business owner, a promoter, a wrestler. He has a match coming up this Saturday, actually. Do you want to talk about the match coming up?
Yeah, I'm defending your honor.
My dad did come to save me the last time I was in the ring, yes.
We have our biggest event that we've ever held for Phoenix Championship Wrestling. It's this Saturday, the 28th of September. I'll be wrestling Devin Reno, your biggest fan.
Yeah.
Not so much.
To say the least.
Yeah, and again, in honor of you, some underhanded things were said about you and actions taken towards you, which I didn't appreciate.
Totally.
And emotions run high, especially in wrestling, any combat sport, really. What I think the difference is with MMA or something like jiu-jitsu and pro wrestling is in MMA, jiu-jitsu, whatever you want to call it, or all those different arts, you kind of have to control your emotions, whereas in pro wrestling you don't. You just let it fly. It could be a benefit or your detriment, that's for sure. But yeah, no, we're holding our biggest event this Saturday, and it's really just a culmination of 6+ years of work done under this roof alone, and we've had some other things kind of set before we even opened this place up, and it's really cool just to kind of take a look back and see how far we've come, not just as a training center, not just as a promotion, but individually, all the wrestlers that have come through here in that time, how much they've grown, physically, mentally especially, and they're all different people now, I think, for the better. And this is kind of like the reward for the fruits of their labor, and everyone's super excited. The city of Mesa is excited. We're going to sell the building out, which again, our biggest biggest crowd ever, and wrestling's super cool when you got big crowds to wrestle in front of. So this is going to be a good one for sure.
Yeah, the crowd's great at all their events. I've been able to experience it a couple times now. So definitely, if you guys are in Arizona or ever visit, this is the premier wrestling organization to check out. And soon enough, I'll be able to get to all their shows and be able to showcase some of my skill set as well. So stay tuned. What I really wanted to cover the episode on is, you're a wrestler, you're a coach. Like I said, you own this school. You are one of the best people that I've seen balance the competitive side of being a wrestler, but also not neglect, in fact, invest even more so, I would call it overtime, into the coaching side of things, to where you've seemed to have mastered the coaching aspect in the ring, but also the mentorship aspect that goes without saying that a lot of people don't really talk about when it comes to this. And there are great instructors and there are great coaches, but above those two, I think there are only a few coaches that really master the mentorship aspect. And for myself and also the other wrestlers that you handle, I feel like many of these people would agree with me that you are far more past just a coach, and you've grown into a legitimate either dad figure, older brother figure, a mentor. Where do you find that the transition between your career as a wrestler, however many years ago it started, feel free to tell us, and to where you're at now, where did that pick up, and where did you start to realize that you're more than just a coach, you're a mentor to these people, and a lot of these people rely on you in their hardest times?
You know, honestly, I think that actually was first, culminated in my mind well before it was related to wrestling, quite honestly. And I say that because I started wrestling in 2001, so, probably older than the guy holding the camera right now, but just kidding.
Definitely bigger.
Like everybody, you're trying to make it, you're trying to be the next WWE guy, whatever the case may be, and physically, mentally, in every capacity at that point, I had no business even thinking that was going to happen for me, because I wasn't mature enough in a variety of different areas in my life, and I was more that half foot in guy instead of all in and making things happen. But I think the first semblance I got of enjoying the role of helping other people was very early on in my sobriety. So I've actually, I used to have some issues with alcohol, from the time I was 15, 16 years old until I was probably about my mid-20s. And I got sober in, now it's a good thing you don't remember anymore how long it's been. But sometime 2008 or so, early 2008. So, well over 15 years now. And part of that recovery process was being selfless and giving back without the expectation of getting something in return. That was always an issue for me. That was always something, I never thought about it consciously, but I always expected something back for whatever I did. Once that switch flipped, when I was willing to be selfless of my time, of my efforts, and help other people, whether it would be something as as simple as making coffee for somebody, or giving them my time and meeting up with them just to talk about whatever.
Which you've done for me countless times.
And it's weird, I look back at that now, and in its infancy, and how I think it really is a huge piece of why this place even exists. I really do. And it just kind of snowballed from there, and that turned into doing, sharing my story at meetings and things like that. And that's snowballed into people saying, hey, can you come to this school and talk to the kids? Hey, can you come to this college and talk to the students? Hey, can you come to this organization and talk to our employees? And didn't even kind of know I was getting into that at the time. It's just, I really felt like I kind of caught my rhythm, and I thought like, I'm just like a really good public speaker. But it's actually, I think it's a lot more than just having that ability. So when we opened this place up, I think it was also a mixture of good timing, because at that time I was kind of like, okay, I'm not trying to get signed to be a wrestler anymore at this point. I thought I was a little too old at that point, but I still loved it. I go, I want to put more of a focus on building that new crop of wrestlers and teaching them the right way. Let them get signed and just say, I'm responsible for it, And I say that half kidding. So I put like all my efforts there and took a step back from trying to get myself out there and have matches and stuff like that. And every now and then something would come up, and I'm like, I'll do that. Or if an opportunity comes up to help one of my students and I have to go wrestle, I'll do that for sure. Or if, a friend of mine's in trouble, I'm going to help them. If I can wrestle to help, take care of that, I will. And I think that's been a huge part of that, is being able to make my primary focus on taking care of the people that trust me with their life, essentially. Because this, doing this, you can get hurt very severely. And it turned into not just, hey, teach me how to do an arm drag and a headlock takeover and a body slam. it kind of turned into, hey, I need your advice, I need your help on something that's much bigger than this. And that's honestly been, that was one of the main reasons or the main goals of myself and John Wolfgang, who both own the school here, why we opened it in the first place. Yeah, we wanted to make great wrestlers, of course, 100%. But we told each other before we even opened the doors here, we said it's got to be more than just wrestling.
Yeah.
It's got to be something more than that. And one of our philosophies is we're making better people.
Yeah.
And I really feel like we are. We do a lot of community feedback or give back to our community a lot, and we can go down that rabbit hole later. But it's really just kind of snowballed into something that I really never even imagined it would be. And people talk about passion a lot, right?
Yeah.
I think that word is overused. I try not to use it.
I was going to bring that up at some point, for sure.
Yeah, and we can come back to that for sure. But for me, coaching in general, mentorship, that's my purpose in life right now, aside from my family, of course. But being a mentor to young men, young women, being that anchor that they can attach themselves to, that support that they can come to when things are rough. As long as they're doing their part, I'm going to be side by side with them to help them out.
And from your perspective, from a coaching perspective, you hear a lot, time is money, everything comes down to like, are you being valued in whatever particular scenario that you're in? Sometimes in my history of being in a similar position, you are subjected to potentially put yourself in a position of, quote, failure, or even just being let down if said person that you feel like you've poured yourself into doesn't reciprocate to the expectations of what you think you deserve. And to that point, you talk about being selfless and everything, and you do it so well, much better than I do. But I think everybody has some sort of an expectation in regards to, I've done this much for this individual, we've done this much together, I have this invisible expectation of how we are going to continue to maintain this respect. And so, it happens everywhere. But when you've experienced instances where people, students, what have you, let you down despite what you feel like you've done for them, what's your best way to work through that, but then still find yourself at your purpose of being able to help the next person, almost ignorantly, understanding that any given person could let you down at any given time, but you still continue to chase it?
Yeah, I didn't think this interview was going to go this way.
Me neither. I had no fucking plan at all.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. And what I mean by that is, and it's good for me, because honestly, I truly believe that nothing that I have that's good in my life right now I would have if I was still out drinking and doing things like that. I really don't. My sobriety is a blessing to me. And of course, the reason it works is because I made it work. It's on me. It's not on you to say, hey, we're really disappointed in you because you're out there drinking or you fell off the wagon or whatever.
Right.
It is on me. I have to take care of that stuff. And I think it kind of goes hand in hand with what you just said. I think one of the biggest mistakes I made early on as a coach was thinking everybody had the same expectations of themselves as I had of them. And I learned very quickly that's not always the case. Because as a coach, we want what's best for our athletes or whoever we're working with. And we see them in this light, and we see the potential and what they could or can't be as long as they do their part. What we don't have control over is whether or not they're going to follow through on what needs to be done to get there. And I learned that hard the first time, and it was rough for me to kind of you pass blame on yourself. Like, what did I do wrong? Am I not a good coach? Like, did I not relay that message clearly? Do I not know what I'm talking about? You really second guess yourself, especially when it's someone that you develop a relationship with, maybe even on a personal level where you care about them, or you see the potential in that person achieving that goal, whatever it is, and when they fall short or they quit on themselves and they don't achieve it, you're kind of disappointed to a part. It's like you feel like you failed as well. So I had to learn very early to kind of remove myself from that situation, and again, liken it back to my sobriety. And sobriety in general, it's like you can't force someone to get sober. They have to want to, right? And that's what I always tell people. I will never give up on you as long as you don't give up on yourself. Simple as that. Like, I'll be here as long as you're kicking and scratching and clawing. But if you fall and I reach out and put my hand out for you to help you, and you got both hands in your pockets, this is an unhealthy relationship at this point.
I like that.
And I think that kind of goes back to what you're saying too, like expecting something in return. And I think I think it's human nature for us to do something and feel like, well, of course I should be reciprocated for that. What I've also learned is that I always get more back way more back when I have no expectation of anything in return. Maybe not from that person in particular, long term, when I'm not even thinking about it. Later on down the line, I go, oh, that's why that happened. That's why that relationship had to end for this one to flourish or anything like that. And it's a waiting game a lot of times. I think, we also live in an instant gratification world where we want to know now. We're scrolling, we're looking at the next thing. Sometimes you got to slow down and kind of let things come to you. And for a wrestler, that's very hard as well, especially new wrestlers. But once I got out of that mindset of like waiting for something to come back to me, I've been blessed with rewards beyond belief, when I kind of got rid of that way of thinking.
That kind of reminds me of the talk that we had right before myself moving to Austin, where I'm exiting a particular scenario that I've been invested to for a handful of years, and I think I'm almost entitled to a certain level of respect or loyalty or what have you. And that was kind of one of the things I took away from, like, for whatever reason, this needs to not be in my life as of right now to allow me to do whatever's next for me. And after a year and a half of being in Austin, I'm blessed to say a lot of really cool things have happened, and I look back to that conversation and I have to just honestly say that you were correct. And that's why I knew that out of all people, I have my immediate family and my best friends, but sometimes you just need that person that's not your family or not your best friends, somebody that you can see from afar has done the trials and tribulations to get yourself to a certain point to where I can look at you and I'm like, yeah, I've known Dom for 1-2 years now, but also like it's so clear without even saying that you've done a lot of work to get to where you're at, and just the way your students cultivate around you, the community that you cultivate here, it just, for me, it was almost weird to almost be as vulnerable to you as early on in the friendship, because that's something that I'm used to doing, but it also just felt so natural that being able to tell you that I felt, no judgment, full listening, you weren't necessarily even trying to fix my issue, you were just there to listen and then give your perspective, and being able to look back on that, it's cool, because the things that you're saying, and actually when you talk about expectations and selflessness and all these are things that kind of remind me of things that Claire kind of teaches me too, because a lot of times I'll end up getting irritated or mad because my expectations of X individual has fallen short, and whether I'm in the right or I'm not, it puts me in a situation to be irritated, be mad, be upset, be generally let down, and she always tries to remind me to, not necessarily expect as much from others, and from a sense of entitlement. And sometimes it's hard to catch, because it's not necessarily something where I sit there and I'm like, I'm entitled to your this.
Right.
But also I internally, emotionally feel some sort of way. And then when you break it all down, wash everything out, like, well, it's kind of entitlement, and I have to kind of check myself on that. And so I like what you said about not having expectations and just doing what you feel like your purpose is. That's a huge lesson I think I can take from you as well as the viewers. And that's why, in general, I really wanted to cover stuff like this, because whether wrestling or not, there's so much valuable information to gain from you from a humanity standpoint. That's something I wanted to at least cover at the very beginning before we get into more of the wrestling specific stuff, because, and to that point, do you still offer like mentorship coaching and everything to people as well?
Yeah, and I'm not so like heavy now on like, hey, if you want to come get it, because I kind of burnt myself out on that a little bit, doing so many different things, but I'm always willing, to take somebody new on, and now there's like kind of like a more thorough screening process.
That makes sense. Yeah.
My time is more valuable than it ever 100%. Has been, being a new dad, and kind of my time being split between so many different duties and places and things like that. I'm not a huge start-stop person with people that I work with. I wish I was perfect myself. I wish I could say that for myself on certain things, but I am I'm a start-stopper personally myself. But I can't afford at this point, and not financially by any stretch, but time-wise, I just can't. I don't have the capacity to invest all this time and effort into somebody that's not going to fully invest in themselves. And that can be hard sometimes to like disconnect from that individual or that situation, because you can feel like you're letting them down. And just because you take a couple steps back from them doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. Doesn't mean you are leaving them high and dry. Like I say, you got to be able to meet somebody halfway, essentially. And we've had plenty of guys, and girls over the years that have come through here and have decided that this isn't the right place for them for a variety of reasons, whatever, and maybe it is the right place for them, but they can't be here.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, hey, I'm here if you need me, but I'm not going to chase you down. I can't, as I have 40 plus other people here that are here every day on a weekly basis that need me, and they show up.
Yeah.
I think, and I'm not just physically here to the gym itself. It's a matter of showing up daily in your life and doing your part, essentially. So those people are going to get priority over anybody else in my life, because they're allowing me into their life. They're giving me their trust. They're being vulnerable with me. They have no reason to be doing that other than they trust me and they feel like they can get something, learn something from me, not get something from me. I don't want to put it that way. So it's the least I could do if they're willing to commit themselves to coming here, as often as they're supposed to and taking my advice. The least I could do is pick up the phone when they call or answer a text message or, hey, I got something going on with something other than wrestling. Can you kind of walk me through it? 100%. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, it is a matter of appreciating your own time and being mindful of that. And you don't have to put out every fire. I think that's what, as a coach, for a lot of coaches, I think they feel like that's their obligation. They have to be that guy that just solves all the problems. Okay, yeah, maybe, but not all at once. It's impossible. So you handle what you can handle at first, and remember that at the end of the day, you're a human being, and you only have so much capacity.
I think, when you say that, I really like how, so when it comes to coaching in general, personal training is a little bit different, but like coaching here, coaching wrestling, coaching football, for a good coach, there's this balance act between exactly what you're saying, being an instructor, a coach on the field or in the ring, and then also a mentorship for those that ask of it or need it. But then also at the same time too, I like how you kind of say that, the people that really get to tap into that specialty of yours are those that show in and show up day in and day out, because to your point, like that talent of yours is 100% of value, and you could put a monetary value on it, or you can also just put a value of X amount of time or X amount of dues paid before like you really open that part of yourself to the said individual. And that's where, I bring up, let's say like some of your Instagram posts that I personally find funny, right? But other people that maybe a little bit more soft per se might be like offended by some of the things I said, maybe even if they're about them. But the thing is though, when you see something like that, the way I interpret it is like, okay, like this man clearly means business. He's real and raw, and he'll call it how it is, but breaking past that, for those that are close to him or those that have proven themselves in the school or to yourself, that's when you start to see like how unique of a person you are to these individuals. And I like the balance, because I look at it like, damn, I need to like be more real like that online, really, and try to just like open up about things I don't agree about as much, and I really like how you balance that, because anyone that genuinely knows you, that has seen what you do day in and day out without a second thought, will understand how dedicated and passionate you are about impacting those that you're around. So just kudos to you for that, because I felt it, and it's crazy because I felt it now in a short amount of time in Arizona, but then also 2 states away in Texas. I always feel like I have somebody to talk to with you, and that has honestly been so helpful for me in the transition to Texas, because me going to Dustin school and then starting the camp and everything, I remember giving you updates throughout the first couple weeks, almost as like my way to like give me confidence to keep going, keep showing up, to know that I'm doing the right thing. And you're doing a great job of responding all my voice messages, giving me some of your own, and it really helped me get through that first part of the camp where I'm new again, I don't know anybody, I'm a little bit nervous because I know I want to impress the right people, and all these different things go into my head, but I didn't feel as lonely pursuing that because I had you to reflect back to. So again, like, thank you for that. So now transitioning and maybe to some lighter topics, wrestling wise. Some of the things I think would be helpful are, this is something I want to ask like wrestling people or jiu-jitsu people, but if you're a beginner, or if you're somebody moving states or looking for an academy or a school, what are your top 3 to 5 red flags for entering a wrestling school or wrestling academy?
Wow, I think that's the first time I've ever heard that question.
Awesome.
And that should be the first question I hear from everybody,
right.
honestly. So I think a lot of people don't do any thorough research as far as not just wrestling schools, and I can only speak for wrestling schools, I can't speak for jiu-jitsu or anything like that. But you would think they would do that research on not just the school that they're looking to enroll in, but like what it entails in general to do that thing overall.
Right.
And maybe you would be or not surprised by the lack of that there actually is out there. Part of my enrollment process is that I bring everybody in for an in-person interview before I even humor having them join this school. One, just to kind of get a sense to know who they are. They can get a sense to know me, and I make our expectations extremely clear on the front end, because I'm not trying to take anybody's money and keep them here. Like that's the reason why I think a huge reason why we're so successful. We don't just take everybody. And I give everybody that chance to make an informed decision for themselves as far as here. But a lot of them will come in and have, been watching wrestling for 4 months total. Okay, whatever. No athletic experience. All right, you're ready behind the 8 ball, and not really knowing what the training aspect involves whatsoever. And they just kind of see the glitz and the glamour of WWE or AEW or whatever. They go, I want to do that. That's all theater. It's like, okay, tell all the theater kids that have come here how easy it is.
Right.
Nothing against theater kids. We actually have a few that actually are still here doing their thing.
That's cool.
But as far as
for you, Matt.
As far as red flags, some of this might sound like I'm being an asshole or a dick about it. I think having a freaking building with a roof over it, with a ring inside of it, is a lost art in wrestling training, honestly.
That's huge.
Yeah, for me, again, maybe I'm just spoiled, or maybe I actually give a shit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whenever I see a wrestling school that's outside in somebody's backyard or in somewhere that doesn't have a roof, bullshit, don't go there, because chances are they don't care. They're not invested.
Yeah.
Maybe they care, but I am invested in this place. I need to make sure this place survives.
Right.
So you know that there's actual care put in.
I like that.
To this place existing in the first place. If it's in your backyard, it could be gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, this place could be gone tomorrow too if we made a series of terrible decisions.
Yeah.
But kind of goes back to our previous, earlier conversation. I got 40 plus people relying on me to keep this place open.
Yeah.
But they also play a huge part in doing so. So I think something as simple as a building makes a huge difference. I think reputation goes a long way as well. Not even necessarily like the reputation of the facility or the training center itself, but who the coaches are. One thing for me, and I've said this a lot lately, my idea of making it these days is when I can have somebody that I admired growing up watching on wrestling that has made a boatload of more money doing wrestling than I have, meet them, get them a chance to see what I do as a coach, what I do as a trainer, what we offer as a training center, what we produce from the wrestlers that come out of here, and that person go, Dom knows what he's doing. Go to that guy.
Yeah.
That's where you want to be. To me, that's my idea of making it right now. See if there's that reputation out there for the people that you're going to be potentially training under. Because now there is no, it's not like you got to take the bar exam to become a lawyer, or you got to do, you got to go through the process to become a doctor before you can cut somebody open.
Right.
Wrestling's the complete opposite. Matt over here could just buy a ring and put it in his backyard, and I promise you could probably get some people in that roofless area to learn wrestling from you. And that's the unfortunate truth of what we do. And I think a lot of people look for the easy way, or the cheapest way, or the most convenient way. And when I was coming up, 18 years old, and I wanted to enter wrestling school, those things never crossed my mind. It was like, where can I go to get the best chance to actually be good at this?
Right.
So I was growing up, in upstate New York, and before I knew there was an actual wrestling school not too far from where I lived, I was making plans to go to the Wild Samoan School in Pennsylvania, and figuring out, okay, what college can I enroll in there, and how can I afford to go to wrestling school while I'm still going to college, and do I have to get a job, and how far is this? And this is like the infancy of the internet days, right? So I'm like, rifling through the Dewey Decimal System at the library trying to figure this stuff out. And I think a lot of people just look for convenience, which they look for convenience in every aspect of their life, and I get that to an extent. But and again, maybe this is like to my own horn or whatever, but I look at us, especially like in Arizona, we're the New York Yankees.
Yeah.
We are the top dog. The results speak for themselves, numbers speak for themselves. If you got the New York Yankees in town, you can go train with them. Why would you go waste your time to go train with the Chicago White Sox that only won 30 games this year?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think a lot of it comes, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole we can go down, whether it's fear, intimidation, whatever the case may be, kind of going back to you're talking about my Instagram posts. Those who know me know me. So I would say know the reputation for sure. And I would also say, if you are looking to one of places like that, like find out what their idea of safety is. I think that's overlooked a lot.
Yeah,
and my main priority as a trainer here in a wrestling school is to ensure the safety of everybody that comes here and trains. My goal is to get them home as close to the condition that they arrived in that evening. Now, this is pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Accidents happen.
Right.
People get hurt. It's part of what we do. But that's also why we invest in this ring to make it safe.
Yeah.
This is a newer ring, and we're always upkeeping it. That's why we have mats all the way around, not just this mat right here, but mats all the way around the ring, because no one wants to fall on concrete if they can help it.
Yeah.
That's why we have safety protocols when guys or girls get injured in training or in matches. A lot of other places don't have that stuff. It's not even a thought in their mind.
Right.
And we're just trying to do things the right way. Again, it's more than wrestling, and what we've developed here is a culmination of things that were missing out here before we were even open. And John and I sat down and we said, if we're going to do it, it has to be this way, because this, and this don't exist out here. And wrestling could be so much better if these things were in place.
Right.
And we actually did it and put it in place, and results speak for themselves.
Yeah, I like that. I think when it comes to people pursuing a wrestling school or even looking into jiu-jitsu schools, it's easy to almost fall into the mindset of as if you're looking into your next commercial gym like LA Fitness or EOS or whatever. And it's important to realize that it's like really not like that. And if you go into it with that mindset, there's a pretty good chance that you will get Planet Fitness value or what have you, And the same thing goes for jiu-jitsu. There's a handful of like major red flags to look out for. So it's interesting to see you relate it to wrestling. The one that I actually liked a lot, which is something that if you're looking into a school out here, this is one of the reasons why I felt so blessed to stumble upon this, like literally just, first try. I remember just, I had wanted to start and I had gotten a reference, I forgot from who, but they referenced me to you, and I don't know anything about wrestling in Arizona outside of like going to a couple of your shows. So I don't know who's good, who's not, but I call you because I need somebody to show me the basics and what have you, and it ended up being just, again, a blessing in disguise. I had no idea what I was walking into. But to your point of, you have an interview process. You have a process to determine if the people coming that are interested in your school are even the right fit. That's huge, because in jiu-jitsu, obviously in the commercial gym world, but in jiu-jitsu you see it a lot. I'm sure in wrestling schools it's quite common, but it's so easy just to see somebody come in, understanding that wrestling, even though on the wide scale is pretty well known now, as far as like people doing it, is still pretty small.
Yeah.
So I feel as though if I was in your position, anybody that comes in wanting to start, that has money, that's willing to start, it would be hard to not take that. But then you fall back to the morals, the understanding of what they're getting into, and also take into account, like, anybody can start jiu-jitsu, because there's varying levels in jiu-jitsu, and it can be a fun family thing, a hobbyist thing, or it could be a very competitive, very difficult thing. But in here, though, there's not really that. There's like indies, and then there's like the big leagues, and that's about it. But either way, whatever level that you're on, you're still having to do all the same things.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing it well and you're not moving well, then it's just not going to work out. So somebody could come in that hasn't done athletics before, that's out of shape, and you could take their however many dollars a month for X amount of time, knowing that it's going to end. And that's where I have so much respect for your system, because you're almost doing that person a favor, even though they may not realize it in the moment, because if you take them on and they don't know how to bump, they hit their head or whatever the case may be, now it's just a whole other world of problems, and that person has a terrible taste about wrestling in the school and whatever. So to deny money that you could have to keep the people that are ready to step in the ring here and to still have a successful, well-known business as a state, that's how you know, like, this is a really good place to be a part of, because you've had people come in, you deny people, you've had people come through, people have stayed, people people have built this, and to me, that's all I would want to see if I was an outsider coming in, trying to see what's a good fit or not, or what school I should want to be a part of.
Yeah, and that's, and that's all from having experience on the other side of the ball. Because before this place was even a thought, and I was coaching at other places and dropping in to help people out and stuff like that. And I can't tell you how many times I would, as a coach, I'd go up to the person that's responsible for the place and I'd say, hey, like, this one in particular person, like, physically cannot do this, and they're a liability to themselves or somebody else. And it's not just like, oh, they're having trouble. Like, over time, you realize, like, this person is a danger, and this just will not compute with that person.
Yeah.
And being told, hey, whatever you do, make sure they keep paying and keep coming back. That was like the last straw for me a lot of times, because I was like, I don't want anybody's blood on my hands. And and then when we started thinking about this place, I told John, I go, and he agreed as well. Never going to do that. I'm never just going to try to take somebody's money because I don't want anyone's blood on my hands. And that's why I give everybody a real a couple opportunities to back out and say, this isn't for me. And that's part of what the interview process is for. It's, again, give them our expectations of what we expect. I tell them exactly how difficult it's going to be. Of course, hardly any of them ever believe me that it's going to be that hard.
Right.
And I say, and then also it's a way for me to feel these people out, because I look at this as my second home. I really do.
Yeah.
I'm here just as much sometimes, maybe slightly less these days. But that interview process is me even just allowing you on my front porch.
Yeah.
I'm not letting you in my house yet, And there's a lot of times we go through the interview process, and there's people that, like, for me, I can tell right away, I do not want this person anywhere near me after tonight or anyone inside that room, because it's going to be nothing but bad.
Right.
You can tell, especially as a coach, you're around enough, people that always have an excuse. It's always somebody else's fault. They don't have their shit together, but it's not their issue. They always have an excuse as to why they didn't. I can see them from a mile away, and I'll do everything I can to just scare them away, and not like telling them lies or anything, but I'm, usually you tell them the truth, and they'll say, yeah, I'll see you in a couple weeks, and they never show up again, which is fine with me. But then it's like the physical piece too. Like, I don't just like, all right, get in the ring. You signed up, I got your money, get in the ring, I'm going to throw you around and stuff. No, this sport, and it is a sport, is physically demanding, but also mentally taxing. And I don't think a lot of people get that. But I also think, and I'm sure you would echo this statement, the more physically strong you can make yourself, you become mentally stronger as well.
Totally.
That's why I put a huge emphasis on the physical here. Because you need to be mentally strong to survive in this business at a high level. That's who I train. I train guys and girls that specifically want to do this at a high level. Get paid for this someday, to do it as your full-time job. If somebody comes in and they say, hey, I just want to have one match in front of my girlfriend so she thinks I'm cool, I love wrestling, man. Awesome, dude. Good for you. There's plenty of other places down the road that'll probably take you, but this place is not for you, because those guys and girls in there that want a job with the WWE are going to eat you alive and spit you out. And I would be doing you a disservice if I took your money and said, yeah, go on in and just give it a half try so you can have that one match. I would feel dirty doing that, if I could say yes to everybody and take their money and pad my pockets, it'd be not better for me financially. I can't. It makes me cringe, makes me sick to think about even doing that. Not just for me, but like allowing someone like that in here that I know is not going to succeed. And putting them alongside the guys and girls that really work diligently hard. And they know too. They kind of look like, all right. It's a tough thing to decide what you want to do, but I'm quality over quantity always, man.
Right, and I think something to point out for anybody that's watching that's not familiar with wrestling is that might sound kind of harsh or even kind of fucked up, but it's actually one of the most respectful and safe things that he can do in his position, because it's not just the safety of the individual trying to come in, it's also the safety of those around them. In jiu-jitsu, if I see somebody that's dangerous, I could just rev it up a little bit and make sure I hold them tight enough, and I'm generally safe. And here, because of the nature of the sport, as much as the new person is in danger, the experienced person is. And to some degree, there's things that you can do to keep yourself safe, but even still, the likelihood of a major accident in pro wrestling, if not working with a trained individual, can be much more dangerous than something like jiu-jitsu, where people are really trying to get at each other. So that's just like something to keep in mind. I also like the.
I've been more severely injured training wrestlers than as an active wrestler myself.
I guess, yeah,
that's the wild part to me.
Right, that makes a ton of sense. And I like what you said in regards to business. I think taking some of the lessons that you talk about business-wise, I really respect him as a businessman because it's that confidence in your product that may not bring as much money up front, but it's going to sustain the product and build into something really, really cool over time, which now you're well past that stage. And I see so many in the coaching field, and obviously in my field is maybe not as brutal as pro wrestling, but there's instances where if somebody comes up to me, like a girl, for example, and asks if I can prep them for a bodybuilding show, I literally will just say no, because I don't want that blood in my hands.
Right.
And that's, that's money that could be for myself or for Matt or for whoever that's associated with the business. And sure, you look at it like, damn, that's, X amount of money. But at the end of the day, not being money hungry up front will allow the business to build and sustain itself longer. And that's one of the things that I've seen from afar from you that I've applied to my own business. And, thankfully now my business has grown with that same mindset. So for any business owner that is in any sort of thing where you're dealing with clientele, to me, that's the best way to do it. Not hold people hostage, number one, but two, not just take anyone just because they want to give you your money for your service. Make sure that they're a right fit for what you're offering. I think that's huge.
And I think that was something I learned a long time ago too, before the school was open, just from a business standpoint. I saw a lot, and not just wrestling. This is, businesses outside the wrestling world. I've seen a lot really try to grow too fast, too soon, before they were ready, and fail miserably, and then eventually kind of fizzle out and dissipate. And that was something actively that John and I thought about as well. We were never trying to grow beyond our means before it was reasonable. Believe me, there's been plenty of times where we could have pulled the trigger and said, hey, let's get a building double this size. It didn't make long-term sense. And then as time went on, we're like, shit, man, good thing we didn't do that, because that would have been a mistake. So we've been very strategic about what we do. But I think patience is a key in having a successful business, because again, we all, when you see money, as a businessman, okay, how do I get that? How do I get it now? Not in a greedy type of way. And it's hard to turn that stuff down. And we've been open for about, I think March will be 6 years, the center itself. We've turned down a lot, because it just didn't make sense, or we didn't have the bandwidth, and if we forced it, it would make this other area of our center suffer, or it would burn our guys out, or us out. And we've turned down so many different opportunities, but for us to be able to take that time and refocus it on what we have and what our growth was looking at, and where we were looking to grow, all these other opportunities just magically appeared. And it's not by happenstance. It kind of goes back to our original conversation. It's like, without expecting anything in return, if you do what you need to do, the right people will find out. And our reputation has grown immensely in this 6 years. And there's other places around here and elsewhere that had a 5, 10, 15-year head start on us. We're lapping them in every area. You know what I'm saying? And that tells me we're doing it right. And this is our biggest event that we've ever had coming up. 6 years in the making. That's 6 years, you know? And, we could have, blew our whole bankroll on having a bunch of former WWE guys or AEW guys come in and wrestle. Not one single guy from television is on this event. It's all homegrown guys and girls from this place. Aside from 2 people that we're bringing in from another local promotion outside the state. And it's a testament to the hard work of everybody in here and doing it the right way, and not being in a rush to, we're going to fill this building with 1,500 people. We're not going to say, all right, well, in 2 months we got to find a 2,500 seater, man. And that's thinking too broadly. That's not thinking with your business hat on. That's thinking too much with this, and that can get you in trouble sometimes too. You got to have a combination of both.
You're completely right. I like that a lot. And I'll compare it to WWE. Most people know what WWE is, whether they watch or not. I would say that the promotion here now is, whether you watch wrestling or not, you have probably seen or at least know of this promotion if you're any bit involved, versus like myself, where I know about wrestling and I know that there's a wrestling organization in Arizona. Like, this is me prior to meeting you. I don't honestly know that if there's one or more at that point. And for a while, I actually didn't know. I assumed that there probably was, but I just didn't really hear of it. So to your point, you've kind of made your guys' organization like the mainstay of pro wrestling in Arizona, and I feel like anytime that there's a show of yours, people are now almost under the belief that this is like the one, regardless.
Because it is.
Yeah,
I think, and again, I don't say that to go, ha ha ha, we're the best. Like, I think there's a formula to make yourself the very best. And I think, my litmus test is this. If I can get someone in the door for the first time to one of our events that maybe is dragging their feet about even coming, which is usually you got a buddy that wants to go to something that you don't want to do, so you go along, all right, fine, I'll go. And they can go, I gotta go see this dumb wrestling thing, and they watch and they go, I will be at the next one, I just bought my ticket for the next one. We win, and I think that's how we win. We don't put a product out there that people laugh at. From doing this for 20 plus years, there's no worse feeling. You can have a bad match, that sucks. You can trip in the ring over your own 2 feet, that's embarrassing as hell. The worst feeling in the world is someone laughing at what you do, especially for the physical and mental sacrifice that we put in. There's no worse feeling. I've had people do that, and whether, not even from a malicious standpoint they were doing it, just like, not necessarily maybe at me, but what was being presented, they go, hey, you gonna come back to the next one? Nah, bro, I'm good. And all the people, the general public is used to the Instagram reels that go viral of, big fat guy falling off the top rope or falling over or getting bashed with the light tube. And if they find out you're a wrestler, they go, oh, did you ever see this before? I'm like, yeah, dude, I saw it. That's not what we do. Like, one of my pet peeves, man, is one of my normal people friends that sends me a wrestling viral video and thinks I've never seen it before. When I'm like, yeah, you're the 40th person that sent me this, and I don't think it's funny nor cool, so please don't ever do that again. And I never want that feeling for our guys and girls. And I think one of the coolest compliments we get is when we have one of those people that come to the show and they see it, they go, oh, you guys are the real wrestling out here.
Oh, that's
you
cool.
damn right we are, and that's what makes them come back. Because if you just have this, okay, it's a wrestling show and it's bullshit and guys suck and don't look like wrestlers and it doesn't make any sense and it's not refined and it just kind of blah. It's just okay, it's something to do for the night, to have a couple beers and we'll find something to do tomorrow, and then do you guys want to see the next one? No, we're good. Whereas now we're at a point where we're having our events and our floor seating is selling out that night for the next show, which is unheard of out here. Our pre-sale is bigger than other people's entire event draws out here. So to me, we have the winning formula. To me, it's a simple formula, and a lot of people want to pick my brain about it and stuff like that, but you don't have the pieces that we do.
No.
And you're playing a losing game.
Right, and I will say the fans that I've been around are very invested in the storylines and everything, and to the point to where I get tagged from one of the kid fans that are creating me in a video game character, you know what I mean? I'm like, I'll take it.
Right? Hey, all right.
So that's cool. And to that point, I think when it comes to the loyalty of the fans, what I've seen is I think, honestly, you do a really good job of selling whatever storyline or whatever match that there is to the fan base. That I see a lot of the fans there, and I can't look at some of the people there and honestly think that they follow wrestling outside of this.
I'm glad you said that, and that's 100% true. And again, that's our difference maker.
Right.
We present a wrestling product that is easy for any general population person to digest.
Right.
We don't cater to the internet wrestling fan. If they want to come here and watch the shows, cool, you're welcome for sure. But those fans are wrestling fans.
Right.
They're already indoctrinated. It's going to be easy to get them to come to a show for the most part. I don't care about them. Not in that regard.
Yeah.
I want the guy who knows nothing about wrestling or doesn't think he cares about wrestling and his wife and his 3 kids to come here and watch this and go, this is awesome. And that is the vast majority of our fan base. Honestly, it's people that either only follow WWE or don't even really follow it, but just kind of know what it is or know who John Cena is. And we get them in the door once and they're like, we bring our kids here every time. This is the coolest thing. And to me, those fans are the most enjoyable to perform in front of because they're genuinely there to enjoy the event. They're not trying to be a part of the event, But if a good wrestler knows how to make the fans a part of the event, just by attaching to them emotionally. And that's our events are high energy. We have a very loyal fan base, and to your point, you look at him and you're like, I would not peg that person as a pro wrestling fan. It just looks like some dude and his girlfriend that are just hanging out for the night, or a family that just maybe accidentally waltzed their way in here. It's not an accident, it's strategic. Our whole marketing strategy is very strategic too.
And I think the exclamation point on that is simply, you guys do a really good job of maintaining professionalism with every single show, and you hold every single wrestler, either homegrown or not, to a high standard of professionalism, so that those fans are more inclined to want to come back or want to bring their kids, and they feel safe in that environment, because reels online or what have you, it's a hit or miss if you're going to a wrestling show and you want your kid to see everything that's going on. So I think you guys do a great job of that. The last couple questions I have, are you still okay on time?
Whatever you need, I'm here. I'm yours, man.
Thank you. The last couple questions I have, since I'm kind of a fitness guy or whatever, I think is relative. So anytime I talk to Brian, he talks about like there not being very many body guys anymore, or at least like where the wrestling landscape is kind of transitioned to. And you talk about having a standard of physical fitness for all of you guys, and I can see in the ring where somebody may not be a bodybuilder, but you can tell that they work on their athleticism, they work on their diet, they work on the weights in the weight room. And why is that so important to you as a coach, and what are some of the benefits to the wrestlers to basically build themselves physically up like that maybe we wouldn't think about?
No, and that is a huge part of our training regimen. Now, I don't expect everyone to come in here and or leave here looking like Brian Cage. I think that's unrealistic, and all props to Brian. He looks amazing, and he's an awesome dude. And if I could have 40 Brian Cages, I would take them. Trust me.
That'd be wild.
But I think wrestling kind of like changed around like that attitude era at times. So like when I was growing up, it was Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man, all these larger than life, jacked up dudes, and I was like, well, how am I gonna look? And then you start getting your Rey Mysterios and your Chris Benoits and your Eddie Guerreros and your guys that are like were smaller, but they were in shape. And wrestling is like, people always liken it to the circus. If you don't like the clowns, there's the lions. If you don't like the lions, there's the trapeze. So if you don't like the Jack Brian Cage, there's also Big Fat Yokozuna. If you don't like Big Fat Yokozuna, there's the luchadors. And I think there's a place for everything. But I think what happened in that transition of bodies and what wrestlers looked like really got misconstrued by people that don't have any concept of what we do. And they go, well, anybody can do it. I look at Kevin Owens, and I'm not knocking Kevin Owens whatsoever. His in-ring ability is astronomical, and he's a phenomenal wrestler, but he's not going to win any bodybuilding competitions anytime soon. So everybody that wants to be a wrestler that doesn't have a work ethic to work on their physique says, oh, I'm just going to be like Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens is 1 in a million. That person coming in the door is not a Kevin Owens. I can tell, And the reality of what we do is this. You can be the greatest pro wrestler in the world within these 4 ropes. You can be the second coming of Bryan Danielson, and that would be awesome. But if you walked in the ring looking like, or walked into a promotion unseen or a wrestling school unseen and looked like crap physically, and you had a guy like a Hammerstone walk in next to you that was half the wrestler that you were, they're going to look at Hammerstone, they're going to talk to him, and they're going to give him their time. That is the reality of what we do. I always tell people this: if you play baseball and you hit 40 home runs a year, you average 40 home runs a year, 120 RBIs, chances are you're going to be in the starting lineup every single day, and you're going to be batting 3rd or 4th in the lineup, and probably on the All-Star team and eventual Hall of Famer. You can be Bryan Danielson, and if I don't see you marketable, you won't even be on my show. Plain and simple. It's a matter of kind of having that combination. I really do think that. So I like to use guys that are skilled in the ring, but I also like to use guys that are either in shape or marketable. I don't give a shit if they're a nice guy. That's a huge mistake that a lot of people, they kind of hang their hat on, well, I'm like super nice and I'm like polite to everybody, but you suck at wrestling and you look like dog shit. I got nothing for you, man. You know what I mean? I'm sure you're a nice guy, and I would maybe hang out with you outside in, in the real world, but I'm not going to put you on a goddamn wrestling poster to sell tickets, And a lot of people overlook that physical piece. And just a recent example is we had a young man, get a decent look from somebody, on a higher level, solely based on what he looked like in an 8x10. minimal experience, pretty new to wrestling, good. They didn't look at his wrestling, they looked at what he looked like and go, okay, tell me more about him. It does go a long way. And as much as people want to think that it's not a big deal anymore, that's what gets your foot in the door. And I mentioned Hammerstone before. I've known Hammerstone since he's essentially started wrestling. And he was like the first guy out here in a long time that would be able to get his foot in all these different doors very early on in his career. And it wasn't because he was like the best wrestler. He sucked. He'll be the first one to tell you that. He wasn't terrible, but he looked better than anybody here.
Yeah, definitely.
And he looked better than about 85%, 90% of people on the independents.
Right.
So when he sends his picture to somebody and says, hey, I'm looking for work, they go, who's this guy that looks like He-Man? And then they find out he's 23 years old.
Right.
And he obviously to look like that, you have a work ethic, And so that tells me something too as a coach. All right, this guy's going to take care of his body. Like, he's not letting the day-to-day get to him. He's not, we're all mentally weak, I think, to some capacity.
Right,
But I'm more willing to invest in that guy because I feel like if he's willing to invest in himself, he's going to help me invest in this.
Yeah, that's huge. And speaking of Alex, so before I knew about anything wrestling in Arizona, I knew Alex was a wrestler, and I used to always see him at Gold's Gym back when I was a teenager. And I had heard that he was a wrestler or whatever, and when I looked at him, it made sense. But this is also before I realized that, especially on the independent scene, that is a unicorn versus what is typically seen. And this is shortly before Matt bought his underwear for about $60. But I remember, this is a true story, by the way.
Oh, man. Dude. I'll get the new ones for you. I'll get them on a discount for you.
How about those ones? So, yes, after Matt bought his underwear. But also, I remember going to one of the shows that you guys put on where he went against Jacob Fatu. And this was before I knew who Jacob Fatu was or his lineage or anything. But I legit remember watching that match. I'm like, this is Triple H versus Umaga, like verbatim. Like, this is like literally what it is. No idea that he was in relation to Umaga. He looks like Triple H. And like, it just is so believable. And that was like, to me, and now looking back, such a marquee match that was literally like in Arizona. That's huge. And to sit there in the front row of that, I had no idea what I was even watching at the time. To see where they're at now is super, super cool. But
I have an eye for talent.
Yeah, totally, literally.
I booked that card.
That's awesome.
That was my line.
And it's so weird to think about, like, here we are all these years later, and I remember taking a picture with Alex and everything on that day. That's really cool. So it goes to show the level of talent that you've grown since starting this. It's really cool. I like what you said about the body stuff and being in physical shape, because to me, if you have any idea that you want to be a wrestler, but for whatever reason, maybe you're too young or there's not a school around or whatever, physical fitness is like the one thing that you can do that can at least get you ahead to the degree of obviously how you look, but also how you perform and also how long you can perform.
There you go.
And that's where, again, you don't have to look like Brian Cage or Goldberg or Alex to be durable because of how you're training in the gym. And as you said earlier, this is such a demanding sport on the body that you're going to suffer damage regardless. But mitigating that damage through physical fitness and proper diet, proper rest, and all these things is widely slept on. And I've seen that even in my short time of being involved, where generally accepted fitness facts are taboo to most wrestlers, even though you would think it'd be the opposite. You would think that wrestlers would be as invested on fitness Instagram as your typical like 16-year-old kid with a mop head and a wife beater, right? But it's just not like that. And I think that's a huge thing for just coming in for my last question, which is, as a beginner, what should you do to prepare for your first wrestling class or camp or whatever? What are the things that you're looking for as an established coach? Obviously physical fitness, but the things that maybe wouldn't be so obvious to somebody that's coming into wrestling for their first time, or even coming in to athletics for their first time, because as you said, schools can take anybody, and I've met a handful of people that never did athletics before starting wrestling. So I've seen instances where like the team environment is kind of new to certain individuals, whereas I've been brought up in sports my whole life. I understand how to address a coach, how to listen, how to be respectful in these team settings, but that doesn't come naturally to to a lot of the wrestlers, I think, that get into it. So what are some of the things that you look for where, regardless of how you look, how old you are, how tall you are, this is one very low-hanging fruit way to stand out?
No, I mean, you would be maybe not so surprised to hear the stories that we have of people coming in, and I always that's a question I always want to ask the general population is why is it that I would never even think for a second that I could walk onto the Cardinals practice field and compete with those guys, but anybody thinks they can just waltz in here and do a moonsault off the top rope it's that easy, and again, maybe it has to do with the lack of barriers to entry to our sport, and anyone can call themselves a wrestler these days. Who knows? But and again, this is just personally for me as the way I coach here. What I look for primarily in anybody is what they have right here. If somebody has heart, I can work with them. If they're the type of person that quits on themselves or others when things get hard, there's no coaching technique in the world I can do to get through to those type of people. So when I have guys or girls that come in and meet and they say I have no experience at all athletically, I don't work out at all. Usually if they say they don't work out at all, I say come back in 3 months and let's see where you're at. Because for some reason everybody thinks most people think, well, I'm going to start wrestling school and I'm going to get in shape.
Right.
You should be in shape to some degree before you step foot in this place.
Seriously.
It's not my job to get you in shape. It's your job.
Yeah.
It's my job to mold you to the shape I need you in.
100%.
So I think the main thing is just body weight, I think, is huge. A lot of people, are worried, especially younger kids. Well, I can't bench press 225 pounds. Yeah, neither could I till I was 28 years old. It's not a thing. Can you control your own body weight, and can you control your own body?
Yeah, true.
That's a very dangerous thing to have in the ring. Is someone that does not have full control of their limbs, of their core, a variety of different things. You will have much more success in wrestling if you can actually control where your body goes and how. Yeah, that's huge. Footwork, something as easy as a speed ladder. You can buy one at the sporting goods store for $20, and just practicing having fast feet movements and side to side, lateral, forward, everything. I think basic conditioning is huge. Highly overlooked at wrestling schools, especially ones that are not legitimate. Yeah, we put a huge focus on conditioning here. Because nobody will blow my wrestlers up. And I've had my wrestlers go out to other promotions across the country here and come back and go, man, we had a 10-minute match, and 5 minutes in, the person's tongue sticking out of their mouth, and I'm dragging them through a match. And to them, they're like, doesn't make any sense. How could they be out of shape? Right. I'm like, that's the status quo. That is how it mostly is out there, unless you get to the higher levels. Right. You can't afford to not have your wind. Yeah, and I always tell people this too, man. It's like, if you got a 20-minute match and you're done, and we got 5 minutes left, and you're picking me up over your head, and my life is in your hands, that's a problem. Yeah. Or vice versa. So that's why we put an extreme focus on conditioning. Nobody likes it. Nobody likes doing cardio. Nobody does. Yeah. Find me the person that does, and I'll show you something. I'll show you your mental illness right there. Right. Yeah. But it's a crucial part of what we do, because sometimes you'll have to go wrestle for 20 minutes straight. Yeah. And then they'll give you a microphone, and you got to talk like you're not dying and make sense to sell the next match for the next show. Can you do that or not? And a lot of people, I think, overlook that piece. So body control, just moving your own weight, flexibility, huge. I know that's a huge thing of yours as well. Mobility and conditioning, all things you can do without even a gym membership, which we actually require you to have a gym membership to enroll here. Whether or not you use it, that's up to you. But again, we always know who doesn't. Right. It's the people that get that are dragging ass or can't keep up or disappear. And again, that's a matter of just being honest and upfront. This is what you need to do. But again, those things, if you can take care of those on the front end before you even step foot in a wrestling school, not just here, you're already going to be ahead of the curve. And anything on top of that is just salt and pepper on the steak.
I like that. What about last thing to that? What about the mental side of it, where you study certain students and you pay attention to either how they listen, how they ask questions, how they respect you as a coach, the different things that go into that. What things stick out to you? I remember one thing that you told me before the Rhodes camp, which was don't do anything that you're not asked of, but when you're asked to do something, do it to your best ability to stand out. And that's something that I took very seriously in that first week. As I think it was the second, third day, and they called the leapfrog drill. And like, and
you can do that,
right? Thank you. Yeah, thanks to you. And up until that point, basic rolls, basic bumps, not doing anything crazy. But as soon as they called the leapfrog drill, I picked the biggest, tallest guy. I was like, you and me, and he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. And then I hit that first one, and then I think that kind of helped set the tone for me for the rest of that camp. So that was great advice that I feel like helped me quite a bit. And my biggest takeaway from that in general is just do what you're told, but when you have an opportunity to show yourself, without doing anything that you can't do, like use that as the time to stand out. But don't try to stand out when it's not your time. And another thing that I took away, maybe just from the camp, and this is something you told me too, like be a good team player, but also a team leader. But the balance between the two, like you're talking about even before we got on camera, where don't be the coach, just be somebody that is leading by example rather than like actually telling people what to do or whatever.
It kind of goes back to that saying, like, be coachable, right? We always hear that a lot, and I think a lot of people think that might be like a cliche saying. There is no more truer statement that a coach wants from his students is for them to be coachable, and that could be from a variety of different aspects, like just like you said, something as simple as if I ask you to do something and you know you can do it, just do it, or do it to the best of your ability, but be honest as well. Be honest with yourself and your coach. Like, don't do something if you don't know how to do it or you don't feel comfortable doing it. That could potentially put you or somebody else at risk. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know how to do that and I don't want to fuck it up, so I'm gonna pass on this. However, though, if there is an opportunity where I'm asking for, all right, give me 2 guys in the ring, I want the guys that are first in the ring that are rushing to get in here. That shows me something. That shows me eagerness, especially like, in some classes, like ring time is limited as far as like space and things like that, capacity. Those guys and girls that are clamoring to get in that ring any opportunity they can, and they're fighting for that, like, I was in here first, get out, like, all right, I like that. And it's a matter of being a leader too, like, especially here, we're always looking for leaders. I'm trying to build the next crop of leaders because, Big Dom ain't going to be here forever, Ideally, for me, I can pass this lineage on to somebody else and they can carry it on for the rest of the time. So I'm always looking for leaders, and it's not just someone to teach the mechanics of wrestling in the class. It could be something as, it's your first 6 weeks and my first 6 week in wrestling camp, and I'm grossly out of shape, but you're in the shape of TheJimmyHouse, which is awesome.
Thank you.
And if you're flying through stuff, I want to see you right by me, say, come on, you got this, like, let's go. That in the trenches type feeling, I think goes a long way. It's like when you're really battling and you're physically or mentally struggling in this gym with doing something, and you got 1, 2, 3, 4 other guys right by you, go, well, we're going to be here, we're going to keep going, or they're doing their squats next to you, even though they're done with theirs because they're with you. That builds a culture that cannot be destroyed. And that's what we have here. It's like, I can't tell you how many times we've had guys, especially brand new, come in and struggle, and the new guys blow through their stuff, and they're like, I'll double up, let's go, we're going to make sure we're in this together. Just, things like that. I just want someone, I'm always looking for just someone that I can, the ideal thing for me is someone saying, hey, send me 6 reliable wrestlers, and I go, I got 15. Let me figure out, let me narrow it down. Who are you looking for? What kind are you looking for? And that's kind of the problem I have right now, which is a great problem to have. I think competency goes a long way, and just common sense, I think, is lost, not just in wrestling, but in a lot of areas these days. And just kind of, being intelligent. Communicating well is a huge thing. I think a lot of people overlook that in every aspect of life, but in wrestling, you have to be a good communicator. That could be a matter of you getting work or not. That could be a matter of you, getting dropped on your head or not. It's a huge part of what we do, and a lot of guys, come in and there's, shy nerds that just watch wrestling and I want to be in wrestling, but this may not be for you, man, because there's a thing called a TV camera, and you're going to probably have to, well, maybe not you, but you have to be on that camera if you want to do this at a high level. So just if you can kind of like add all those little pieces in and just become that guy or girl that's reliable. and just say, if something needs to be done, I know how to do that. I can do that. And not just suplex, body slam, backdrop, all that stuff. I always teach my guys, learn every aspect of wrestling you possibly can, because if you can do that and you show up, there's always going to be a spot for you. And that's something I learned early on myself. I learned every piece of wrestling, and I was a wrestler. I've been managed, I've refereed, I've did video, I've done commentary, I've done interviews, you name it, I've done it. And I don't take any bumps and I get paid for it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love it. Great. Well, to close off, I wanted to kind of steal something that Claire kind of does, but give it my own twist. One thing that you're proud of and 2 things that you're chasing.
Man, that's a good one.
Thanks.
Is that her? Credit to Claire?
No, I thought about this as you were talking.
Credit Claire for this. So, one thing I'm proud of, is that right?
Yeah, one thing you're proud of, 2 things you're chasing.
So, the one thing I'm proud of is I'm going to cheat and kind of put them together. One, it's the family that I've created at home with my wife and my son. Something I never thought I'd have. Two people that I didn't know I could love that much.
That's awesome.
And this place. And when I say this place, I don't mean the promotion, and I mean every single guy and girl that's put something into this. I consider them my second group of children. I love them all with my entire heart, and I'm extremely proud of all of them and what they've done. So that's what I'm proud of. 2 things I'm shooting for. Is that what was it?
Chasing, shooting.
Chasing for, okay. Chasing this to be a worldwide brand.
Fuck yeah.
Eventually that is the goal, to make this the place, and it may not say Arizona at that point if we can go, even more national. But when anybody thinks I want to become a better wrestler and a better well-rounded person, mentally and physically stronger, I go there because I got this guy to learn from, I got a JimmyHouse to learn from, or whatever the case may be. When we can go global with this, now we're cooking. It ain't over. That's when we just first start. And we go global with that. And then the other goal I'm working towards is just, for me, just attain a higher level of personal excellence for me. I'm the type of person that never thinks I know everything. I am not the best wrestling trainer in the world. I am not the best coach in the world. I am not the best motivator in the world. I know that I strive to be. And I just want to, that's my goal, is to always strive for more, whether it's physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever the case may be, so I can look back a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year from now and say, am I better today than I was back then? If I am, great. Now we got some more work to do. Or if I'm not, kind of have that self-reflection and say, it's on you, and you got 40 plus people looking up to you. Are you doing your part? And just being mindful of that and having the self-awareness of where I am and where I want to actually be.
Great, that's amazing. Well, that will wrap up the very first episode of the JimmyHouse podcast. Do you have any plugs or anything that you want to put in the video?
Yeah, you mentioned my Instagram posts. I'm going to be doing more of those. So if you're sensitive, maybe not the best way to go. But you can follow me on Instagram at Dom Vitalli, or our wrestling school here in Mesa, Arizona at Train in AZ, or our big, huge wrestling promotion out here, the best around, PCW AZ, all on Instagram. You can find them all on Facebook as well. We don't really mess with Twitter these days. We tried that and that didn't work out well. But yeah, come check us out, and if you're ever interested in training with the best, right? Hit us up, and if you're the right person, you fit our culture. We're always looking for the right people, for sure.
Yeah, I'll put all those links in the information box below. Please make sure to check that out and reach out to Dom if you have any questions about wrestling and the shows or whatever. He's one of the best guys I've ever met, so I know he'll take care of you. A personal thank you from me. Of course, thank you for introducing me to the great sport of wrestling, but also believing me as much as you have, even here, but even through the departure of moving to Texas, is something where anytime that I'm trying to motivate myself through the harder days and try to remind myself why I'm doing this in particular. I have the kids in the forefront of my mind, but also I really, 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 really want to try hard to bring it back and be able to create something that can make you proud and be able to tell the world that I started here underneath your tutelage, and obviously with Dustin's help and everything too, but also just knowing that this is where I started, knowing that the type of people that train here and the coach that they're under, it's more motivation for me to try to represent that anywhere I go, even outside of wrestling. So thank you for being that figure for me, and thank you for your time on the podcast. Until next time, JimmyHouse, Dom Vitalli, out.